The stars looked different from the observation deck of the Dauntless. Commander Alan Phillips stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the vast emptiness of space. After 20 years in the Earth Defense Force, he thought nothing could surprise him anymore. He was wrong. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission. Unknown origin." The voice of his communications officer, Samantha Green, broke the silence. Alan turned away from the viewport. "Put it through." The large screen at the center of the bridge flickered to life. The image that appeared made several crew members gasp. The creature on screen had pale blue skin, 6 eyes arranged in a circle, and what looked like breathing tubes extending from where a human nose would be. "Greetings, inhabitants of Sol 3. I am High Executor Zralk of the Galactic Hegemony. We come in peace and wish to establish diplomatic relations with your world." Alan kept his face neutral despite his racing heart. First contact. After centuries of wondering, humanity finally had proof they weren't alone. "This is Commander Alan Phillips of the Earth Defense Force vessel Dauntless. We welcome peaceful contact with the Galactic Hegemony." Within hours, the news spread across Earth. Alien life had been confirmed and they wanted to talk. The United Earth government called an emergency session, and Ambassador Susan Wright was chosen to lead the diplomatic team. 2 days later, Susan stood in the newly prepared meeting room aboard the Dauntless, adjusting her formal blue suit. Her assistant, Ryan Baker, checked the translation devices one last time. "Are you nervous?" Ryan asked. Susan smiled slightly. "Of course, I'm about to meet aliens, but mostly I'm curious." The door slid open with a soft hiss. 3 aliens entered, led by High Executor Zralk. Up close, the aliens were taller than humans. With slender bodies and movements that seemed too smooth to be natural, their clothing appeared to be made of a material that shifted colors slightly with each movement. "Ambassador Wright," Zralk said through the translator, "it is our pleasure to make official contact with your species." Susan stepped forward. "The pleasure is ours, High Executor. Humanity has long wondered about life beyond our world." The meeting lasted for hours. The aliens explained that the Galactic Hegemony included hundreds of species across thousands of star systems. They had existed for over 10,000 years, expanding their reach and bringing order to the galaxy. "Your development has been quite rapid," said one of the other aliens, who had introduced himself as Advisor Krell. "Most species take much longer to achieve your level of technology." Susan noticed something in his tone, a hint of concern perhaps. "We've had our struggles," she replied carefully, "but we've learned from them." As the meeting continued, Alan watched from the side of the room. Something didn't feel right. The aliens were polite, but there was an edge to their questions. They asked about Earth's population, resources, military capabilities. Too many questions about military capabilities. Near the end of the meeting, Zralk finally revealed the true purpose of their visit. "The hegemony would like to offer Earth a place in our great society," he said, his 6 eyes blinking in sequence. "As a protectorate world, you would enjoy the benefits of our advanced technology, trade routes, and protection." "And what would Earth provide in return?" Susan asked. "A reasonable amount of resources and, of course, military service from your population. The hegemony requires all member worlds to contribute to the common defense." Susan kept her expression pleasant. "And if Earth wished to maintain its independence?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Zralk's skin darkened slightly. "Perhaps you misunderstand," he said coldly. "The offer of protectorate status is generous. The alternative is not independence, but rather compliance through force. All worlds eventually join the hegemony. It is the natural order of things." Alan tensed, his hand moving closer to his sidearm. Around the room, other security personnel did the same. Susan's smile didn't falter. "Perhaps you misunderstand our position." Her voice remained gentle, but there was steel beneath it now. "Earth thanks you for the offer, but we must decline. We prefer to establish relations as equals, not subjects." The aliens looked at each other, their breathing tubes flaring with what might have been shock or anger. No emerging species has ever declined induction into the hegemony, said Advisor Krell, his voice tinged with disbelief. Then we are honored to be the first, Susan replied. Later, after the aliens had returned to their ship, Susan and Alan stood alone in the meeting room. You realize what will happen now? Alan said quietly. Susan nodded. They'll try to force us to join them. It was clear from their questions that they've never faced a species that said no. Are we ready for that? Alan asked. We've been preparing for possible threats from space since we first looked up at the stars, Susan said. The defense grid, the lunar bases, the asteroid belt shipyards, we're not as helpless as they think. On the hegemony ship, Zralk was sending a message to the Galactic Council. The humans have refused protectorate status, he reported. They show unusual defiance for a single-planet species. The holographic image of Grand Counselor Vexisthar frowned. This is unexpected. What is your assessment of their military capacity? Limited, Zralk replied confidently. They have a small defense fleet, approximately 80 vessels, most of which appear to be designed for local system patrol rather than full combat. Their weapons technology is primitive compared to ours. Then prepare a disciplinary fleet, Vexthar ordered. 20 warships should be more than sufficient to bring these humans to heel. No single planet has ever stood against even that small show of force. It will be done, Zralk said with a slight bow. As the transmission ended, Advisor Krell approached. High Executor, there is something unusual about these humans. Their behavior does not match our previous encounters with emerging species. Zralk dismissed the concern with a wave of his hand. All primitive species believe themselves special, Krell. They will learn their place as all others have. Back on the Dauntless, Alan received a message from Earth Defense Command. The tracking systems had detected the alien vessel sending a high-powered transmission toward a distant star system. They're calling for reinforcements, he told Susan. She nodded, her face calm but resolute. Then we'd better prepare. Send word to Admiral Hayes. It's time to activate Operation Scattered Shield. As the hegemony ship departed from Earth orbit, neither side realized that they had just set in motion events that would change the galaxy forever. The humans prepared for a fight they knew was coming, while the aliens remained completely unaware that they had just challenged a species unlike any they had ever encountered before. Admiral Catherine Hayes stood in the command center of Luna Base, Earth's primary military installation on the moon. The large screen before her showed red dots representing the approaching hegemony fleet. 20 warships, just as their intelligence had predicted. All defense units in position, Admiral, reported her second-in-command, Frank Cooper. Catherine nodded. Operation Scattered Shield is active. Our ships are in position throughout the system. Instead of grouping Earth's modest defense fleet together, Catherine had ordered them to spread out. Some hid in the asteroid belt. Others used the gravity wells of Jupiter and Saturn as cover. A few smaller vessels even hid in the rings of the outer planets, their signals masked by the ice particles. The hegemony fleet will reach Mars orbit in 30 minutes, Frank said. Should we send another warning? Catherine considered the question. Yes. One final chance for them to turn back. The communications officer sent the message. Minutes later, the reply came from Fleet Commander Draxus of the Hegemony. Humans of Earth, the alien's voice filled the command center. Your defiance is noted but meaningless. You have one planetary defense force. We are 20 ships of the eternal hegemony. Surrender now, and your population will be treated with mercy. Catherine smiled slightly. They still think we only have the ships they detected in Earth orbit. Their mistake, Frank said. Catherine opened the fleet-wide channel. All vessels, this is Admiral Hayes. The enemy has declined our final warning. Execute Battle Plan Echo 3. Good hunting. On the bridge of the defense cruiser Valiant, Captain Nora Lewis received the order. Her ship was hidden in the shadow of Deimos, one of Mars's small moons. Engines to full power, she commanded. Target the lead hegemony vessel. The Valiant's engines glowed bright blue as it shot out from behind Deimos, closing rapidly on the surprised hegemony fleet. 2 other Earth ships followed, emerging from hiding places around Mars. The hegemony ships, caught off guard by vessels appearing where none should be, scrambled to respond. Their formation, designed for an assault on Earth, was suddenly vulnerable from multiple angles. On his flagship, Commander Draxus shouted at his tactical officer, "Where did those ships come from? Our scans showed nothing in this area." Before the officer could answer, the ship rocked violently as the Valiant's weapons found their mark. "Shields at 60%, someone yelled. Draxus steadied himself. "Return fire. Destroy those human vessels." But even as his ships engaged the threat near Mars, alerts sounded across the hegemony fleet. More Earth ships appeared, seemingly from nowhere. 5 emerged from the asteroid belt. 3 more rose up from Jupiter's cloud cover where they had been hiding. "Impossible," Draxus whispered as his tactical display showed human vessels appearing throughout the solar system. On the EDF ship Guardian, Captain Peter Rodriguez watched as his vessel's advanced stealth technology finally powered down. The ship had been hiding in plain sight, its experimental cloaking system making it virtually invisible to hegemony sensors. "Target their command ship," he ordered. "Disruptor cannons at full power." The Guardian's main weapons, reverse-engineered from a crashed alien vessel decades earlier, fired brilliant green beams that cut through the hegemony flagship's shields. Back in the Luna Base Command Center, Catherine watched the battle unfold. The humans were outnumbered, but their surprise attack and knowledge of the solar system gave them an advantage. "Admiral," Frank said. "Captain Lewis reports the destruction of 2 enemy vessels. 3 more are heavily damaged." Catherine nodded. "And our losses?" "The Defender has taken heavy damage. They're withdrawing to Jupiter's moon Io for emergency repairs. No other major damage reported yet." 6 hours later, the battle was over. Of the 20 hegemony ships, 8 had been destroyed. 6 more were severely damaged. The remaining vessels, including Commander Draxus's flagship, were in full retreat, jumping to faster-than-light speed as soon as they cleared the solar system's edge. Earth had lost only 2 ships, with 3 others damaged, but repairable. In the hegemony capital world's Grand Chamber, the Galactic Council watched recordings of the battle. The mood was one of shock and disbelief. Grand Counselor Vexithar turned to his military advisors. "How is this possible? They are barely beyond their atmospheric confines." General Moxnar, the hegemony's senior military commander, studied the battle data with a troubled expression. "They fight differently, with unexpected ferocity and unpredictable strategies. They use the natural features of their system against us, and some of their technology." He paused. "Some of their weapons should not be possible for a species at their development stage." "Could they have had outside help?" another counselor asked. "Perhaps another spacefaring race provided them with advanced technology?" Moxnar shook his head. "Our records show no other civilized species has visited this region of space. Whatever technology they have, they developed it themselves." Vexithar stood up, his tall frame casting a shadow across the chamber floor. "This changes nothing. No single planet defies the hegemony and survives. Designate Earth as a Class 1 threat requiring immediate subjugation. Assemble a proper invasion force." "How many ships, Grand Counselor?" asked General Moxnar. Vexthar's 6 eyes narrowed. 500 warships, enough to conquer an entire sector. I want Earth brought to heel, and I want to know how they acquired such technology. On Earth, celebrations of the victory were tempered by the knowledge that the real war was just beginning. In the underground war room of the United Earth government, Admiral Hayes met with the planet's leadership. "We bloodied their nose," she said, "but they'll be back and in much greater numbers." President Maria Alvarez nodded gravely. "Then we implement the Phoenix Protocol. It's time to show our true capabilities." Admiral Hayes looked at the assembled leaders. "Are we sure? Once we reveal the extent of our preparations, there's no going back." "We're sure," Maria said firmly. "Send the activation codes to all hidden facilities. Wake the sleeper ships in the Kuiper Belt, and contact the Neptune shipyards to begin mass production of the new destroyer-class vessels." As her orders were relayed, Catherine thought about the coming storm. The hegemony had no idea what they had started. Humanity had been preparing for this moment since they first detected signals from deep space 50 years ago. They had hidden their true capabilities, keeping their most advanced technology and military assets concealed from any watching eyes. The hegemony thought they had challenged a simple, confined civilization. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The next 3 months passed in a blur of activity across Earth and its solar system. Hidden facilities that had existed for decades finally revealed themselves. On the dark side of the moon, massive hangars opened to release ships that had been built in secret. Defense platforms emerged from hidden bases on Mars and Venus. Shipyards concealed within the asteroid belt began working at full capacity. Colonel Jack Wilson stood on the roof of the Denver Command Center, watching as civilian volunteers lined up to receive basic training and equipment. Similar scenes played out in cities around the world. Earth had always known this day might come. They had planned for it. "Colonel, the President is starting her address," said his aide, a young lieutenant named Paul Harris. Jack nodded and followed Paul inside. On the large screen, President Maria Alvarez addressed the United Nations of Earth. "Citizens of Earth," she said, her voice steady and determined. "The hegemony fleet will arrive in 2 weeks. They come with 500 warships. Believing this show of force will make us surrender. They are wrong." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "For 50 years we have prepared for this moment. While building our public space program, we secretly constructed defenses and weapons. While talking of peace, we trained for war, because the universe is vast, and we always knew we might not be alone." In orbit above Earth, General Olivia Rodriguez supervised the deployment of the orbital defense grid. Thousands of satellites, previously disguised as communications or weather monitoring platforms, now revealed their true purpose. Some carried energy weapons, others held missiles. All of them formed Earth's first line of defense. "Sector 17 is online," reported her assistant, Benjamin Ward. "All defense platforms showing green status." Olivia nodded. "What's the status of the Jupiter Moon's defense array?" "Coming online now. The Io and Europa platforms are fully operational. Callisto will be ready in 6 hours." On the edges of the solar system, Admiral Hayes watched as the sleeper ships awakened. These massive vessels had been hidden in the Kuiper belt, powered down to avoid detection. Each one carried enough firepower to match 10 normal warships. "Fleet status?" she asked her communications officer. "Neptune Defense Fleet reports ready. Uranus Fleet at 92% capacity. Saturn Fleet fully operational. Jupiter Defense Force standing by." Catherine smiled grimly. The hegemony thought they were attacking a single planet with limited defenses. They had no idea that humans had been preparing for this possibility for generations, spreading their military might throughout the solar system while keeping it hidden from prying eyes. 2 weeks. Later, the hegemony invasion force arrived. The massive fleet of 500 warships emerged from faster-than-light travel just beyond Neptune's orbit. Fleet Admiral Kravax stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. The largest warship in the hegemony fleet, it measured over 5 miles long and carried weapons capable of reducing a planet's surface to molten slag. "Status report," he demanded. His second-in-command, Sub-Admiral Drell, approached with a datapad. "The human solar system appears much as our scouts reported. One habitable planet with primitive defenses, a small moon with some military installations, and scattered outposts throughout the system." Kravax nodded. "Begin the advance. Standard conquest formation. I want troops on the ground within 3 days." As the massive fleet moved forward, alarms suddenly blared across every ship. "Energy signatures detected," shouted a sensor officer. "Multiple vessels powering up. They're everywhere." Kravax rushed to the main view screen as it showed dozens, then hundreds of human ships appearing throughout the system. Some emerged from behind moons. Others rose from gas giant planets where they had been hiding. Many simply appeared, dropping their stealth fields to reveal warships that had been invisible moments before. "Impossible," whispered Drell. "Our scouts reported no more than 100 vessels. Before Kravax could respond, the first shots were fired. From the moons of Neptune, massive energy weapons lashed out, striking the lead ships of the hegemony fleet. The battle had begun. For 7 days, the fight raged across the solar system. The hegemony fleet, despite their superior numbers, found themselves constantly surprised by human tactics and technology. The humans used their knowledge of the system to devastating effect, luring enemy ships into asteroid fields or the crushing gravity wells of gas giants. Even with their careful planning, humanity took heavy losses. Earth's orbital defense grid was damaged in several sectors. The Neptune defense fleet was nearly destroyed holding the line. But the hegemony suffered worse, losing over 100 ships without even reaching Earth. Frustrated by the space battle, Kravax ordered ground troops deployed to multiple locations on Earth. "If we can't destroy them from orbit, we'll crush them on their own soil," he declared. Near what was once called San Francisco, Sergeant Daniel Murphy led a mixed unit of soldiers and civilian militia. Armed with weapons that combined human ingenuity with reverse-engineered alien technology, they fought the hegemony ground forces with unexpected determination. "They're dropping more troops 3 miles east," Daniel told his squad as they took cover in the ruins of a shopping mall. "We need to get to higher ground." Lisa Bennett, a former office worker who had volunteered on the first day, checked her rifle. "How many?" she asked. "Too many," Daniel replied honestly. "But they don't know the terrain. We do." All across the planet, similar scenes played out. Professional soldiers fought alongside teachers, farmers, and office workers who had trained for this moment. The hegemony forces, expecting to face only military resistance, instead found an entire planet willing to fight. On the Eternal Dominion, Fleet Admiral Kravax received increasingly concerning reports. The casualty numbers climbed as the days passed. Hegemony forces that should have easily secured their objectives were being held back by fierce resistance. "How many soldiers does this planet have?" he demanded, slamming his fist on the command console. The intelligence officer hesitated before answering. "Sir, preliminary reports suggest many of their combatants aren't soldiers at all. Our forces are facing civilians fighting alongside their military." Kravax stared in disbelief. "Civilians? Fighting a hegemony invasion force?" "Yes, sir. And they're effective." As the battle continued, the true scope of humanity's preparations became clear. This wasn't just a military fighting to protect their world. This was an entire species that had prepared for this moment, hiding their true capabilities while building defenses throughout their entire solar system. The hegemony had expected an easy conquest. Instead, they found themselves in the fight of their lives against an enemy they had severely underestimated. The news of Earth's unexpected resistance spread quickly through the hegemony. For the first time in living memory, a hegemony invasion force faced possible defeat. Grand Marshal Sorthal, the supreme military commander of the entire hegemony, took personal control of the situation. "This cannot stand," he told the Galactic Council. "No single planet has ever defied us. I will lead the response myself." Within days, 1,000 more hegemony warships entered the Sol system, fully 1/3 of the entire hegemony military might. The message was clear. Earth would submit, no matter the cost. On Earth, the United Earth government met in their underground bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains. The room was silent as Admiral Hayes delivered her report. "We've held them back longer than expected," she said. "But we cannot match these new numbers, not with conventional tactics." President Maria Alvarez looked around the table at the tired faces of her military commanders and civilian advisors. "Then it's time for the final contingency," General Rodriguez nodded grimly. "The Spear Protocol." "Are we certain?" asked Defense. Minister Edward Chen. "Once we commit to this, there's no going back." "We're certain," Maria said firmly. "Begin preparations immediately." Captain Natalie Pearson stood on the bridge of the stealth vessel Silent Arrow. Her ship and 5 others like it had been hidden in a secret base on Pluto's moon Charon, waiting for this moment. Each vessel carried a small, elite crew and was equipped with experimental faster-than-light drives, reverse-engineered from captured alien technology. All systems ready, Captain, reported her navigator, Alex Foster. Natalie took a deep breath. Mission parameters received, jump coordinates locked in. She turned to face her crew. What we do today will change everything. The hegemony has never faced a counterattack in their core systems. They won't be expecting us. As the Silent Arrow and its sister ships prepared to jump, Major Richard Barnes led a different kind of mission. His team had spent years establishing contact with species previously conquered by the hegemony. Now, with Earth fighting for its survival, those connections became vital. Richard's ship, disguised as a hegemony cargo vessel, docked at a space station orbiting a planet in the Taurus sector. There, he met with representatives from 3 different species, all of them watching the conflict with Earth with growing interest. If your people rise up now, Richard told them, the hegemony cannot fight on 2 fronts. They've committed too many ships to Earth. The alien leader, a tall, gray-skinned being named Krex, looked skeptical. Your people are brave, human, but you cannot win. Why should we risk our own lives? Richard showed them videos of the battle for Earth. Ordinary people fighting alongside soldiers, defending their homes street by street. Because if we can fight, so can you. The hegemony is not invincible. They can be beaten. As these missions unfolded far from Earth, the battle for humanity's homeworld intensified. The hegemony, frustrated by continued resistance, began bombarding major cities from orbit. Lieutenant Commander Grace Martinez guided her ship, the Defiance, through the debris field of a destroyed hegemony cruiser. The newly unveiled vessel represented the pinnacle of human military technology, a perfect blend of Earth innovation and reverse-engineered alien systems. Target locked, reported her weapons officer. We have a clear shot at the command ship. Grace hesitated for just a moment. The mission parameters were clear. A direct assault on Grand Marshal Zorthal's flagship would be suicide, but if successful, could throw the entire hegemony force into chaos. All hands, prepare for emergency acceleration, she ordered. Weapons to maximum charge, we're going in. The Defiance shot forward, its advanced engines pushing it faster than any human ship had gone before. The hegemony vessels, caught by surprise, scrambled to respond, but the Defiance was too quick, too agile. It weaved through their defensive fire, closing rapidly on the massive flagship. Boarding teams ready, Grace said as her ship took fire from all sides. Shield status? Holding at 30%, came the tense reply. But we won't survive another direct hit. The Defiance slammed into the side of Zorthal's flagship, its specially designed boarding tube cutting through the alien ship's hull. Grace led her strike team into the breach, fighting their way through the corridors toward the command center. Meanwhile, Natalie Pearson's mission deep in hegemony space began to bear fruit. The Silent Arrow and its sister ships struck key supply depots and command centers, causing chaos and confusion. For the first time ever, hegemony worlds found themselves under attack, their invincible navy suddenly absent, drawn away to fight the humans. The resistance contacts established by Major Barnes erupted into open rebellion across a dozen worlds. Species that had lived under hegemony rule for centuries saw their chance for freedom and took it. On Earth, despite the orbital bombardment, humanity fought on. Every time the hegemony thought they had secured an area, resistance would emerge, from underground bunkers or hidden mountain bases. The aliens could not understand how a species confined to a single planet could have prepared so thoroughly, could fight so effectively. Grace Martinez and her team finally fought their way to the command deck of Zorthal's flagship. Blood dripped from a wound on her forehead and half her team had been lost in the fighting. But they had reached their objective. Grand Marshal Zorthal stood waiting for them, surrounded by his elite guards. Taller than the other aliens with ceremonial armor that gleamed under the ship's lights, he cut an imposing figure. I wanted to see you humans up close, he said, as his guards raised their weapons, to understand what kind of species could resist us this way. Grace kept her own weapon trained on the Grand Marshal. Now you have your chance. Zorthal studied her with his 6 eyes. How? How has one world stood against the might of 1,000 systems? You have no empire, no conquered worlds to draw resources from. You should have fallen in days. Grace's answer was simple, delivered with quiet pride despite her exhaustion. Because we've spent our entire history fighting ourselves. What you're facing isn't our full military. It's just what we created when we finally started working together. Sorthal stared at her in stunned silence as the implications of her words sank in. If this was not humanity's full strength, what more could they be capable of? At that moment, across the solar system and beyond, the tide of the battle began to turn. Not through a decisive victory in space or on the ground, but through the realization spreading through the hegemony forces that they had fundamentally misunderstood what they were fighting against. 3 days after the boarding of his flagship, Grand Marshal Sorthal called for a ceasefire. The request stunned both the hegemony forces and many humans. No one could remember the last time the hegemony had stopped an invasion before complete victory. Aboard the Earth vessel Dauntless, now serving as the central command ship after the destruction of several Earth defense bases, Admiral Hayes received the message with cautious optimism. They want to talk, she told President Alvarez, through a secure communication link. The Grand Marshal is requesting a formal peace conference. Do you believe it's genuine? Maria asked, her face showing the strain of the past weeks. Catherine considered the question carefully. Yes. Their losses have been severe, and the reports from Captain Pearson suggest that rebellions are breaking out across their territory. They're fighting on too many fronts. 2 days later, Ambassador Susan Wright once again led a diplomatic team, this time aboard the neutral space station that had been hastily constructed in Earth orbit. The station had been built by combining parts from both human and hegemony vessels, a physical representation of the potential for cooperation rather than conflict. Susan straightened her jacket as she entered the conference room. Despite weeks of warfare, she maintained her professional appearance. The human delegation included Admiral Hayes, General Rodriguez, and several other military and civilian leaders who had helped coordinate Earth's defense. The hegemony delegates entered from the opposite door. Grand Marshal Sorthal led them, his imposing figure now somewhat diminished by the realities of defeat. Council Elder Tixan, one of the oldest members of the Galactic Council, accompanied him, along with several other high-ranking hegemony officials. Ambassador Wright, Sorthal began, his translator converting his words to English. The hegemony wishes to end this conflict. Susan nodded. Earth shares that wish. We never wanted war. Yet you prepared for it extensively, Elder Tixan noted, his ancient eyes studying the humans with curiosity. For a species confined to a single star system, your military capabilities are unprecedented. The negotiations lasted for 3 days. The hegemony, accustomed to dictating terms to conquered worlds, found themselves in the unfamiliar position of compromising. Earth demanded recognition as a fully independent power, not a subject or protectorate. They also insisted on reparations for the city's damage during the orbital bombardment. Most surprisingly to the aliens, Earth demanded that the hegemony recognize the independence of any world that had risen in rebellion during the conflict. That is not possible, Sorthal protested. Those worlds have been part of the hegemony for centuries. They belong to us. Susan's expression remained calm but firm. No world belongs to another. Self-determination is a principle we will not compromise on. The rebellions show these planets want freedom. They must have the chance to choose their own path. During a break in the negotiations, Admiral Hayes found herself standing near Elder Tixan in a viewing area overlooking Earth. The blue planet turned slowly beneath them, the scars of battle visible even from orbit. Your world is beautiful, the ancient alien said quietly. I have seen thousands of planets in my long life, but few with such vibrant colors. Catherine nodded her thanks. We think so too. It's why we fought so hard to protect it. Tixan turned his 6 eyes toward her. There is something I must understand, Admiral. Our intelligence reports indicated your world had only limited defense capabilities. Yet you had ships hidden throughout your system, advanced weapons technologies, and civilian defense protocols that should have taken decades to develop. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. What is the true extent of Earth's military capabilities? How many soldiers could you field if needed? Catherine considered the question. The truth was that humanity had indeed committed most of its military resources to the fight. Their advantage had come from preparation, determination, and the element of surprise, not overwhelming numbers. But sometimes perception was more valuable than reality. That's classified information, Elder, she said with a small smile. But I can tell you this. What you faced was our planetary defense force, hastily, unified under immediate threat. You never saw our actual military deployment capability. We didn't even have time to call back our expeditionary forces from the outer colonies. Tix-An's breathing tubes flared in shock. Outer colonies? How many worlds does humanity hold? Catherine maintained her enigmatic smile. That's also classified, but I can tell you this. We were prepared to continue this fight for decades if necessary. The forces you encountered? That was just our first line of defense. The peace treaty was signed on the 7th day. The hegemony, for the first time in its long history, recognized Earth as an independent power, not subject to their authority. They agreed to pay reparations and, most significantly, to allow any world that sought independence to negotiate their own terms. As the human delegation prepared to return to Earth, Commander Alan Phillips stood on the observation deck of the Dauntless with Ambassador Wright, watching their blue planet grow larger in the view screen. Do you think they believed you? He asked. About the outer colonies and expeditionary forces? Susan smiled. It doesn't matter if they were real or not. What matters is that they'll never risk finding out. Alan nodded, understanding the strategy. So what happens now? Now we rebuild, Susan said. And we prepare for what comes next. You think there will be more conflicts? Susan looked thoughtful. Perhaps, but I think there will also be opportunities. The galaxy is changing. The hegemony's power is waning. Other species are looking to us as an example. An example of what? Of how to stand up for yourself. Of how determination and unity can overcome even the greatest odds. She turned to face him. We showed the galaxy that humanity isn't to be underestimated. As news of the peace treaty spread throughout the galaxy, so did the story of how humanity, a species confined to a single star system, had fought the entire hegemony to a standstill, and how, in the stunned silence that followed their victory, they had casually revealed that the hegemony had faced only a fraction of humanity's true strength. Whether true or not, no one in the galaxy would ever underestimate humans again. On distant worlds newly freed from hegemony control, people looked to the stars and whispered the name Earth with a mixture of awe and hope. In the halls of the Galactic Council, diplomats debated what this new power might mean for the future of the galaxy. And on Earth itself, humans looked to the stars not with fear, but with anticipation. They had found their place in the galaxy, not as subjects but as equals, not through conquest but through standing firm against those who would conquer them. The dawn of a new era had begun,